Next, we're going to hear from dedicated leaders across our state who are working tirelessly to address youth homelessness in their regions. Each area has unique challenges and opportunities, and our partners from Northern Nevada, Southern Nevada, rural communities, and tribal communities will provide insights. To start, we'll hear from Trevor Macaluso, CEO. Did I get that right? Yeah, good. I was just remembering what happened to us at the other summit, but that wasn't me, it was somebody else. CEO of Eddy House, Reno's only organization dedicated to serving young people experiencing homelessness, representing Northern Nevada. From Southern Nevada, please welcome Melissa Jacobowitz, Chief of Development Strategy at NPHY. We got Michele Fuller-Hallauer. Close enough? Close. It always gets me. We'll share the rural perspective and her work with our Nevada Rural Continuum of Care. And unfortunately, we plan to have Yvonne Mori, the director of Stepping Stones Emergency Youth Shelter, which is the only dedicated shelter for Nevada's tribal youth, to discuss tribal youth's unique needs. But unfortunately, she got on a plane this morning, and it was deplaned due to a mechanical issue. So she tried to jump on a couple other flights, but couldn't make it. So I have, if I can find it in my enormous amount of text here, if I can find it, I just have a very brief statement to read on her behalf that she just shared with me. Well, it's in her voice, so let's just pretend I'm Yvonne. Hi. I'm Yvonne. And my name is Yvonne Mori, and I am a member of the, she is a member of the Fallon Paiute Shoshone tribe. I am the director of the Stepping Stones Youth Shelter, which is the only Native American youth shelter in Nevada for Native American children who are the wards of court for abuse and neglect. Unfortunately, we're facing closure at the beginning of the year due to the Bureau of Indian Affairs taking our funding away. It is a long story, but in short, we are fighting hard to save this place for our tribal foster and homeless children. If we do not secure funding, we will be closing in January, which will be devastating for our tribal communities. There are many issues in Indian country that affect our children, and due to me not being able to be there today, I will just make a list of our main challenges while working with the children in our facility. I planned on elaborating on these, and I'm sorry that I didn't make it in person. There's a lack of foster homes for Native children. Our children struggle in non-Native homes due to cultural barriers. Some that she mentioned, for example, Native American youth, their hair, whatever length it is, really represents something, and being asked to cut it is just a disgrace in their culture and their communities. At first, it is a sign of respect not to make eye contact, not to look someone in the eyes. And people who are not culturally sensitive to this may read this into it in an inappropriate way. These are just a few of the examples of the cultural barriers that require Native youth to have Native youth-specific facilities and Native youth-specific foster care. Untreated mental health, lack of mental health providers, cultural barriers, substance abuse, domestic violence, homelessness, and again, lack of specialty providers that treat children under the age of 12. I'm glad she mentioned this because we at NPHY and other providers, we also see young people well below the age of 12 entirely on their own experiencing homelessness. And although there are many other challenges, these are the main ones that we deal with daily. I apologize that I was not able to make it in person. I was looking forward to having this discussion with you as there are many struggles in the Native communities I want to share with you. And she shared her contact information, and we will make sure to send it out to the participants after the summit is over. Under one sky, Yvonne. So with that, I'd like to invite the other representatives of the regions to come up and begin our discussion.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Trevor Macaluso, and I am the CEO of the Eddy House in Reno. As Arash mentioned, we are the only youth shelter that exists in Northern Nevada. So for the next just couple of minutes, I'm going to review what services look like in Northern Nevada, some differences that we experienced there, and of course what we've been accomplishing over the last year since our main updates at the last summit, which is pretty exciting. Being that we are the only shelter, there's not a whole lot of other service providers in our area, which is pretty unique. We've in fact only had a youth shelter in the Reno area since 2020. And so even the fact that we've had shelter has been really unique. However, we've seen a dramatic increase in the number of youth accessing services. In 2023, we saw a 40% increase in the number of youth accessing drop-in and shelter services in Washoe County. And not only that, we represent roughly 10% of all homeless within the Washoe County homeless system. However, we don't receive nowhere any closer to 10% of the funding that the other shelters are receiving, which are in many cases contracted and financed by Washoe County itself, the government system, which makes things really, really fun. We deal with a lot of weather. It's really cold. It's cold here today, but it's actually really warm here today for those of us that came in from Reno. We deal with snow, and we deal with freezing temperatures, and still the same heat during the summers. And that definitely causes a lot of issues when it comes to outreach, when it comes to what living on the streets looks like for youth in the Northern Nevada area. Being, again, the only provider, we actually, again, having that shelter, the closest youth shelters to the Reno area exist in San Francisco, here in Las Vegas, and Salt Lake City. So our impact is widely spread. In fact, we receive many youth from the Northern California areas in Roseville, Auburn, because for many of them, Reno is just a hop over the mountain as opposed to going the other direction. So while the majority of the youth that we serve in Northern Nevada are from Washoe County, the next portion are a lot from rural Nevada that make their way towards us. Places like Hawthorne, Elko, Winnemucca, Fallon, Fernley, that end up in Reno due to opportunity or hope of opportunity, or those who are in Northern California doing the same. Substance abuse is a real issue, not only around the state. I know Michele will talk about that even in more depth, but we have some serious fentanyl issues occurring throughout the Reno area, and fentanyl laced with many of the things, and of course, our young people are exposed to those adverse effects quite regularly, which impacts not only their overall health, but is a high risk for the number of youth that we're working with. Yeah, it's interesting. Northern Nevada is a very unique community, and in the fact that we've only had, as I mentioned, a shelter since 2020. There has, for a long time, was this disbelief that youth were homeless in our community. Our founder actually started our organization back in 2011 as a master's student, recognizing that she was personally seeing the number of youth growing that were homeless to be rapidly increasing. And so using funding from her late husband's life insurance policies, how she started the Eddy House, Eddy being her founder, an amazing woman. She's 72 and just hiked the Pacific Crest Trail this summer, so she's awesome. But we face a lot of those unique factors of a lot of folks in our community not really recognizing the need. And we've grown rapidly. As I mentioned, we've opened our shelter in 2020, and since then, we've now increased our capacity to having 50 shelter beds for youth. We have 29 working workforce programming beds, and we have broken ground, and in the spring, we'll open a 36-unit apartment complex, which will act as transition. So we've been very fortunate that while it's taken some time for the community to recognize this growing issue, that they are. And it's finally, we're gaining a lot of ground, gaining a lot of support, which is amazing, obviously. Working in legislation and partnering with folks across the state, last session we were able to get a little continuation of some of the work that the movement had done previously when it came to Nevada IDs. And so we're really excited about the continuation of that work. One of the other main challenges we face in Northern Nevada is something Southern Nevada is currently experiencing, and that's anti-camping ordinances. The city of Reno has had theirs for a number of years. Washoe County and the city of Sparks passed theirs in 2023. And so we've seen the impact of those. And for the youth side, what it does, it just makes it harder to find the youth. Like, they're still there. The camping ordinances just move people around. It doesn't actually get rid of the homeless, right? All we're doing is making it really, really hard for service providers to find the people we're trying to serve and improve our community. And so we've seen some adverse effects from that, but we're really excited about some other momentum and partnerships that we have been developing in Northern Nevada. One of the things that we're really experiencing in Northern Nevada specifically is that over 30% of the homeless population come from the foster care system, right? Pretty standard that we've seen across the state. But 37% of new homeless folks that in the youth population that receive services at Eddy House were reporting to us that they were actually homeless before the age of 18. Before the age of 18. You heard Arash talk about earlier kind of that highlight of what's causing youth homelessness and those broken homes, really, right? We are dealing with youth in our community, 45% of who were physically or sexually abused as children, right? So they have a history of adults in their lives who were supposed to protect them and didn't. And so in 2 weeks here, Eddy House is going to be launching an outreach program specific to high school students in order to partner with the Washoe County School District to identify more and more McKinney-Vento youth. We all know that identifying the number of homeless youth in a community is extremely difficult. They've got to, in many cases, self-identify. They're staying in doubled up. They're couch surfing, right? We will find youth on the street. That's why we do street outreach, but that's not the bulk, right? It's not what we're experiencing in Northern Nevada. And so by being able to address the problem upstream through the youth who are in the high school programs, we're excited to not only start to identify how many youth there are and start to meet their resources and meet their needs, but to hopefully curb the need for them to access shelter later on. Two of the main issues we have is that in Washoe County, according to Washoe County Human Services Agency, there are no foster parents in Washoe County who are willing to take a teenager to foster. On top of that, our Safe Place program, while amazing in many respects, only has 2 beds in Washoe County.
That's crazy.
We have no shelter for those who are under the age of 18 in Washoe County. So you're a 17 and a half-year-old who is not safe at home. CPS is not going to get involved because A, they don't have a bed, and B, you can take care of yourself. And so we have a large service gap, and while, it's ridiculous. But anyways, so our hope is that through these outreach programs, we're going to start to identify what the real number of homeless youth who are in high school is so that we can actually start addressing the problems in the community and help the community realize, much like they did with the youth population currently working with 18 to 24, that these youth are in our community, that we can't keep ignoring them. It's time to pay attention, and it's time to do something next. So it's a little bit of a highlight of what we're experiencing up north.
I'm a lot shorter than Trevor. Awesome. So just to piggyback on that and share a little bit about youth homelessness in Southern Nevada and the current state of youth homelessness here, especially in Clark County. Just to give an idea, Trevor mentioned a lot of the lack of resources up north, and Michele is also going to talk about a similar situation or even different situation in rural communities. But here in Southern Nevada, we are lucky that we do have a number of resources. But those resources are still not enough, right? Not nearly enough. And we know that the overwhelming majority of young people experiencing homelessness throughout our state are residing here in Clark County. We know that at least over 70% of the young people experiencing homelessness, sometimes even up into 80%, 90% in the state, are located down here in Clark County. And in fact, our most recent numbers, our 2024 point in time count, showed us that on an average night, we have 444 unaccompanied young people every single night experiencing literal homelessness, meaning they're living on the streets, they're staying in a shelter or temporary housing specifically tailored to people experiencing homelessness, and that is it. And that does not include our couch surfers, right? That does not include young people bouncing from friend's house to friend's house, staying in daily, weekly motels, doubled up, etc. So just of literal homelessness on an average night, that's over 400 young people who are identified. And that's only the people who are identified, right? We know a lot of people fall through the cracks in those counts. And that is a 34% increase from 2024. So not only do we have the majority of young people experiencing homelessness concentrated here in Clark County, but unfortunately those numbers are rising. And in fact, in our last school year, there were over 13,000 students identified as experiencing homelessness in the Clark County School District. So this is a vast number, right? This is a significant number of young people that we need to be able to serve here in our community. And in Southern Nevada, youth homelessness is varied. We have young people living on the streets or in cars. There's young people who are staying in abandoned buildings to stay out of sight, sometimes in encampments or tunnels, but also doubled up couch surfing, staying temporarily in extended stay hotels, etc. And we know that a lot of times young people's experience, it kind of moves in and out of all these different types of homelessness, back and forth between these variety of experiences. And that makes them qualified or not qualified for services sometimes, depending on the funder's requirements. We also know in Southern Nevada that homelessness, this is everywhere, but when we're talking specifically about Clark County, that BIPOC youth, like Arash mentioned earlier, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, are incredibly overrepresented in our homelessness services system and in young people experiencing homelessness here in Clark County. We know that on an average year, basically year over year, about 50% or more of young people in our homeless services system in Clark County are Black. And Black people make up less than 15% of the general population in Clark County, right? So this is a massive overrepresentation in terms of who's experiencing homelessness. It is not equally likely that any young person will experience homelessness. And similarly, roughly 20% of the young people in our homelessness services system in Southern Nevada also identify as Hispanics or Latinx. So we know that BIPOC youth are very overrepresented all throughout the state, but especially we know that here in Clark County. But so what are we doing about it? Arash has already shared quite a bit of what we were doing in our community, but just to give some highlights of some updates from the previous year. So one thing that we've been working on is our youth coordinated entry revamp, right? So we're gonna have young people come up and talk about that process, but what's been really great about that is we've received a lot of feedback that it is hard for young people to get into housing, it is hard for them to know where to go, it is hard for them to get off wait lists and actually get services, and that they need more help. They need more streamlined systems, more equitable systems, more accessible systems, and so we're working to make that happen. We've been working on that for the majority of this year, and something that's really fantastic that's coming out of that is just so much collaboration. We're building a lot of collaboration in our community. We have all different types of service providers, jurisdictions, others coming together, and especially we have very engaged and varied youth leadership. So we've been able to hire a paid consultant for that project, Naraya, and she's going to come share about that. We also have, paid young people who are with Nevada Homeless Alliance, the Lived X consultants that are participating in this process. We also have the Southern Nevada Youth Action Board that's participating in this process. So we have all kinds of young leaders who are being paid and compensated for their time who are participating in this process on a weekly basis, which is really excellent. And we've made a lot of progress. We're proud of the progress that we've made. We've done a lot. We have a lot more to do, but we continue to move forward. But through that process, we've also had a lot of youth feedback that's kind of come to light that's broader than coordinated entry, right? As we've been working on improving our coordinated entry system to make it easier for young people to access housing, we found out that a lot of young people have shared some broader systems level change we need to make, some experiences that they've had that go beyond coordinated entry, whether it's experiences at shelters, in housing programs, not being able to get all the services that they need, gaps they've identified, etc. And so accordingly, this feedback shows us that there's a lot more work that needs to be done here in Southern Nevada to ensure their experiences are uplifting, affirming, safe, and truly meet their needs. So accordingly, we're going to be working on larger systems level improvement, but through this process, we've built trust and collaboration and through providers and young people, and we're going to be able to leverage that to continue to make broader change. So that's really exciting here in Southern Nevada. Also, a big continued theme in our work, Trevor mentioned substance use and things like that. Here in Southern Nevada, substance use and mental health continue to be themes that come up that our young people don't have access to the level of services that they need. And it's interesting to be able to see over time these changes that a lot of young people are directly asking for mental health support, right? It's not just that adults in the system are saying, you need mental health support. It's also young people themselves are asking for it. There is this cultural shift in a destigmatization of the discussion of mental health, right? And a lot of our young people are asking, and unfortunately, the homelessness services system is not equipped to meet their needs, especially their most severe needs, right? And so if our homelessness system can't meet it, who's going to meet it? We look toward a mental health system. We don't have much of a mental health system here in Clark County, especially for young people. So unfortunately, youth are stuck between these two systems that don't necessarily have the robust resources that they need to meet those comprehensive mental health needs. So that is an ongoing combo and something we continue to advocate for and work on here in Clark County. And then Arash also shared about some really exciting developments in our community, right? YESI, which is a statewide grant, but the great work that we're going to get to do through that here, and also YHDP, which is Southern Nevada focused, which we're really excited to bring these millions of dollars here to our community to grow our system, right? And so through YESI here in Southern Nevada in specific, we're really excited to be able to begin supporting the Southern Nevada Youth Action Board. they've already grown a lot in numbers and strength. A number of them are here today. In the past year, they're doing a lot of great things, but we're really excited to be able to take this funding stream, this initiative, and work collaboratively with them to bring more trainings, bring assistance to recruit more youth, do other complementary leadership development activities, and have them work with also our statewide movement. So really excited for that. And then YHTP, of course. This is a massive development for Clark County's fight against youth homelessness. This is bringing an unprecedented investment into our community, and it's exclusively devoted to youth, right? That's rare for an amount of money like that to be exclusively devoted to youth services. So we're really excited about what that means for our community. So we're going to dive into that with our COC, with Clark County, with the Youth Action Board and other youth leaders, other provider partners, and we're going to develop our community's plan of how to utilize this funding in the most impactful and strategic way we can so that we can transform our systems, not just right now, but for years to come, utilizing all this youth feedback that we're receiving. So I think a really great takeaway for what's going on in Southern Nevada, a lot of needs, a lot of moving pieces, but it's a time of massive potential. That's kind of our main takeaway of what's going on here in Clark County, which that's an exciting thing to be able to say. Right? The time is riper than it's ever been in Clark County for collaboration and youth leadership. We've made so much progress coming together over the past year to work on all of these projects, YESI, YHTP, coordinated entry, et cetera, et cetera. And this is the time to build toward future growth and innovation. We're really excited to have that opportunity. We can't let this time go by without manifesting that potential because who knows when it will come again. So there's never been a better time to get involved in this work. So if you're in Southern Nevada, now's the time to join us. And we're really excited what we're going to be able to do here in the next few years.
Boy, I don't know how I can follow that. Good morning, I'm Michele Fuller-Hallauer with Winged Wolf Innovations. I am wearing a rural Nevada hat today.
Woo! Yeah.
So I'm really excited to be here at our Youth Summit. Before we get started, before I start talking about rural Nevada and youth homelessness, I do want to make sure that I ground us. Right? I think it's important for us to remember, we're talking a lot about systems and what we're going to do in our systems and how we need to change our systems. And we're talking a lot about data and what our data means. And I want us to remember, and I think Arash did a great job of telling us about what our young people go through in our broken system and really helping us to kind of vision what our system needs to look like. But we need to remember that those are individual young people. Those are our cousins. Those are our nieces. Those are our nephews. Those are our sons. Those are our daughters. Those are our brothers. Those are our sisters. Those are our neighbors. And how would we feel if that's our loved one that is going through that situation? So when you hear a number, I want you to think, not just that number, but is that my loved one that is one of those numbers that's experiencing whatever it is we're talking about today? And then as we go into the afternoon and start talking about solutions and how we change our system to be the wonderful vision that Arash helped us to think about, so that we can develop a healthy system. If my loved one experiences a challenge, a housing challenge, what do I want them to encounter? So I just kind of wanted to level set so that we're there. I would be remiss if I didn't say that. So let's talk about rurals in the rural Nevada. We don't have youth homelessness. I'm done. So we have to be cautious about data and data collection, especially in the rurals. It's really hard to get to count, especially our young people. Right? I'm talking to the choir here because our young folks hide, and they hide in plain sight. Yeah. And Trevor already told you, our young folks in our rurals go to our population centers where there are services. So they go to Eddy House, they go to Clark County, where NPHY or the Shannon West Homeless Youth Center, or where there are other services. So in our rurals, we're not finding a lot of unsheltered young people. But I can tell you that in 2024, a point in time count, our school district homeless count. Now, school district count is a bit different, right? Because that includes our unsheltered, unstably housed folks, as well as our folks that are living in cars and in our hotel motels and are unsheltered. That we had 1,037 students that were identified as homeless, 752, so 75% of those folks were doubled up, right? So they're in a precarious living situation. So we do have issues with young people being in a homeless situation in our rurals, but we don't have services. We don't have services, and so I'm not gonna really hone in on that, because I think you've already kind of heard that. What I really do want to talk about more is social determinants of health, and what that means for us as a system, and as we look to the future and developing our systems, and what we know as Winged Wolf and the plethora of other things that we do in Nevada, and the other studies and research that we've done, is that the substance use that is happening throughout rural Nevada is, I think, pretty indicative of what is happening and what is going to happen, and things that we need to be concerned about, and maybe I need to consider in both northern Nevada and southern Nevada, and consider, is this happening both in those urban areas, those urban areas as well. What was interesting, though, to us is that things like experimentation with heroin, meth, ecstasy, and synthetic marijuana use are actually going down, but for both middle school and high school. But middle school use for cocaine has skyrocketed. And habitual marijuana use for both middle school and high school has skyrocketed. And so I think that's something that's really interesting for us to consider. The other thing that I think is interesting is that we have one county that for opioid use, and it didn't translate across all rurals, but it's one county for opioid use had a significant increase of opioid use in the 2020 ninth grade use. Young people that use opioids in ninth grade. So they would have graduated in 2023, right? That increased over 10%, and that went from like a point. So I mean, it was very low, and it increased over 10%. So that was a significant data point for us. And the other reason that's important is because across Nevada, graduation rates went from 85 to 87% in a 2016-2017 rate, or 2016-2017 through 2021-22, and then they dropped. In the 2022-23 school year, they dropped to 82.44%. Wow. So those are those young people that were in ninth grade in 2020. So what happened? What was happening in 2020? Okay, I don't know. I'm not making that jump, but something was happening. Something's going on. I think more research needs to be had. There's also some other phenomenon that's happening in that we have some preliminary data that in some of our counties in the rurals that it's anecdotal data that we have a trend of increasing numbers of young people, of our children, preschool children, that have developmental delays. And we have one county that has had to open additional pre-K classrooms because of the spike in developmental delayed young people this year. So let's think about that. When they were born, something was happening. And when we look at our school district, IDA counts, they have trended up. From 2021, they were 62,000, and now they're 67,252. And when we look at our DD eligibility count trends across our state from age 3 to 5, we had some decrease happening, and then we're starting to see an increase this year in our school year. This year's school year. So I think we need to keep an eye on what's happening for our young people, our little tykes, because this is important. This might have really important implications for our youth systems, education, youth service providers, youth behavioral systems providers, youth substance use providers for decades to come. Because if we've got young people that we haven't helped them to make good decisions, that can lead to a lot of things that our systems are really going to need to be prepared for those implications. So I just wanted to bring those things to our attention, right? I think that there's things that we need more research. We need to dive into the data. We need to be careful what the data's saying. I'm not jumping to conclusions, but I think we need to be careful and be aware and keep our eyes open and not be too tunnel focused, but we need to look at all social determinants of health. We need to go upstream, and we need to figure out who can we partner with to make sure that we can give our young people the supports that they need as early on as possible, and their parents the supports that they need as early on as possible, so that those young people and their families are stable and supported, and they don't fall into our homeless services system, and then we don't have the cycle continuing. And then once we address homelessness in our young people now, we can work ourselves out of a job.
I thank you so much, Trevor and Michele. That was fantastic, fascinating information. You can see a lot of the similarities and differences throughout the state, and just a lot of things for us to keep in mind and work on over the next few years, and collaborate together across states. So hopefully, rising tide lifts all boats, and I think that we can work together to address some of these issues for all of us. So now we're going to take a 10. Oh, thank you. Now we're going to take a 10-minute break. So right now it's 10:37, so we want to come back at 10:47. So everybody please come back at 10:47, use the restroom, etc. And yeah, be back here in 10 minutes for our next presentation.